Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
I recently had my Xbox Live account hacked, and the guys at Microsoft got me back up and running in a matter of days, and it was a good experience. And Stephen agreed to talk to us about security for your Xbox account.
Yes.
So, Stephen, what do you do at Microsoft?
Well, I'm actually the Director of Policy and Enforcement for the Xbox Live service. And what that means is that I run the team that really helps to protect the service, and we do that in three key ways. The first is that we actually look at all the complaints that customers send in to us about online behavior, and then we take action against those complaints. We investigate, and then if an action needs to be taken, we take it. The second piece is around actively policing the service. So we're out there every day playing games with customers to help make sure that people aren't behaving badly or to punish cheaters and things of that nature. And the third is really education and trying to teach people about how to keep their accounts safe and how to have a safe experience online as well.
And I guess let's talk about the safety one first. I, got quote unquote hacked, but in checking into it, it sounds like somebody had my password, so I probably did something stupid along the way. But what kinds of things should we not do so that people don't end up with our password?
It's so interesting. The word hack gets used in such a variety of inappropriate circumstances. I think this is a great example of that, right? Social engineering to me is not hacking in the purest sense of the word. But having said that, there are some things that people can do that they may not know about to help protect their accounts. The first and most important thing that I can say is to never give out your password. I know that there's a lot of times you'll receive a message on Xbox Live from someone that you believe might be trustworthy that says, hey, I'll give you 1,600 Microsoft points, I just need your password to deposit it into your account. That's a scam. Or, hey, how would you like to be in the super secret Modern Warfare 3 beta that's not even out yet and nobody knows about? Just give me your password and it'll automatically be downloaded to your Xbox. That's a scam. And so I think people are a little bit free with their passwords. So I'm not suggesting that happened in your case, but that is one example where we see that people think, oh, it's my gamer tag, gosh, what's the harm? And they don't realize that actually what they're giving out is the password to their Windows Live ID. And that Windows Live ID can have their credit card tied to it or have any number of pieces of information about themselves that they don't realize they're giving out. The second thing is really to help protect that Windows Live ID. We have a number of new settings that we have for Windows Live ID at live.com, and you can set them to help prevent someone from trying to take over the account. One of the more interesting ones is what we call strong secondary proofs, which is the ability to tie your phone, your actual phone number via SMS, and that will mean that you will get a text when someone tries to take over your account, and you can then stop it. Or the concept of trusted PC, where only from that computer can you do certain actions on that Windows Live ID, again, to help reduce the risk of someone hijacking the account. The last piece of information that I usually like to give out to people, and I know that I'm actually bad at it, is to try to limit the amount of personal information that you give out on the internet. I'm, of course, a very public person. I have a lot of my information out on the internet. There are times when I, too, have to deal with the fact that someone is trying to take over some account of mine, somewhere else. And from that perspective, that's just something that happens from time to time, but you don't want that happening to you. So limiting the amount of information that you give out on the internet can't help in that regard, because at the end of the day, the people who take over these accounts really have more free time than you do. And all they're doing is just, exploiting a problem that no one's really solved. The problem with social engineering is not something that anybody has solved. The banks haven't solved it. High security places haven't solved it. So certainly entertainment systems haven't solved it either. So that type of thing, you want to try and limit it as much as you can.
And you talked about something earlier that I do as well, of the secondary questions of where did you grow up, where were you born, what's your mother's maiden name, giving fake answers. But you even took it a step further.
I actually sort of set it up to where when the secondary question comes up, I use that as an opportunity to create an entirely new password. I usually say to people, if it asks you what's your favorite color, answer encyclopedia. Just remember that you answered it with something that has nothing to do with it. But I actually use it to create an entirely second password. There are a number of good utilities out there as well that help you manage passwords. How you use them is very important, because if you use them improperly, you can end up actually putting more risk, into the scenario. But there are utilities such as 1Password, which is one that I happen to use. I use it only on one machine, and therefore I limit sort of the places where it's located, and I only use it for certain things. I don't use it for everything, but that's one example of you can use a utility that will completely randomize these passwords and pieces of information such that I don't even know what they are. I have to use one password. I have to be at that physical computer. So we take it. I take it pretty far.
Right. Well, and you made a point, because I've been anti-one password because I work mostly from a laptop.
Right.
And
you mentioned that.
And I have lost my laptop in traveling once
Sure.
or twice and things like that. And with all of my passwords in one place, I was against it. But you said use it only on a desktop.
Oh, that's how I use it. But you could use it with some degree of not increasing that surface area of attack. If you have a laptop that has a trusted platform module, for instance, you could BitLocker that hard drive to where it's pretty much not going to be able to be encrypted offline without a significant amount of time investment for decades. So there are ways to use these utilities. I'm not suggesting that's the only way, but there are also different interpretations of what's safe and what isn't. Security is not a destination. Security is a journey. The attackers will always come up with new techniques. You will always come up with new counters, and that's sort of how it evolves.
And so the other part of what your job is the enforcement part. So does Microsoft have like this hit squad that flies out to see the people and break their legs for stealing my account?
We certainly,
I really like that. And if I could tag along, that would be awesome.
No, we actually work with law enforcement. So that knock on the door is not going to come from a Microsoft individual. It's going to come from someone with a badge. Local law enforcement or Secret Service or FBI. We have very strong relationships with them. And we are pretty easily capable of figuring out at the end of the day who the worst miscreants are, because the final analysis is it's all data. It's all coming from the internet. And there are certain steps you can take to try and hide. But inevitably, given enough time and investigation, you can find those people. So we certainly do work with law enforcement, and of course, can't catch all the bad guys, but we certainly work very hard to make sure that they have the right information to take the steps that they need. And so our guidance to customers is, anytime identity theft occurs, that is a crime. And on the one hand, it's not really appropriate for Microsoft to be the people knocking on the door. But on the other hand, we do encourage customers to contact local law enforcement. We do probably actually have the forensic evidence that is needed to help track these people down. We certainly ban their accounts, we certainly ban their consoles, and we certainly restrict their access to Xbox Live when we can detect it. But the strongest message is typically, again, sent by that person with the badge.
And script kiddies do need to understand that you do work with the law enforcement.
Sure.
Bad things will happen if you try and hack people's accounts.
It is certainly an interesting skill set to be able to spend hours and hours and hours, I guess, on the phone social engineering people. I don't think it's a very productive one at the end of the day, and it has real consequences. I mean, this is something that can ruin your life. I mean, and there's a lot of kids that believe, well, hey, I'm under 18. I got news for you. They actually just watch you, and then the day you turn 18, and that's when you actually might get a tougher visit. So from that perspective, I mean, I think those powers are better spent for good rather than evil, but there's always going to be that element out there that try to take it.
And part of my original rant was that customer service said it was 3 to 6 weeks to get these things resolved, but you guys turned it around in like 72 hours.
Yeah, think of it more as a time bound, because there's some cases, I'll describe sort of the worst case scenario, where we have an individual call in reporting a theft, and we find that their account has been on many different Xboxes across many different places, and it takes a lot of time to pull all that information together. So now a behavioral analysis has to occur to try and figure out, what does normal look like for this account? And after a lot of investigation and a lot of time together, we find out the person calling in is the attacker, and they want to know how we find out what we find out. So we see that. We actually see people calling in who have not been hijacked, but they claim to be, to either try and get an account or to try and see how we react. Or we have a customer who calls in and maybe their account has been hijacked, but then it's been traded many times. So if it's simple, it doesn't nearly take the amount of time. If it's complex, we have to make sure we're getting the account back into the right person. Now, the good news is that once we call it in and we can verify that there's been a recovery that was unauthorized or that was unexpected, we can lock the account and we can prevent the attacker from spending money, and we'll refund money that's spent. But sometimes the investigation can take a little bit of time. So think of and it's usually 21 days is the longest the initial outset is really meant to just sort of set expectations. It could be a complex investigation.
And then the first indication I should have had that my account was compromised was that I got your account is no longer valid, or your profile is no longer valid on the Xbox.
That it's been recovered somewhere else. That's usually...
And I didn't know that. Is there any other indicators that someone should look for that would say, hey, my account might be compromised?
Well, certainly they should look for any unauthorized charges to their credit card. I always encourage people to not just wait for the monthly statement, to look at what's going on in their credit activity. I usually check my bank balances and my credit card balances minimum once a week. Just take a glance and see what's on there. And so that is another vector that they may find out before they actually find out anything else. But typically it's turning on the Xbox and finding out the profile's been recovered somewhere else, or they log into live.com and the password has been changed. Those are two instances where, in the case of the Xbox, certainly contact 1-800-4MY-XBOX and let people know so that we can get that into the right queue for recovery.
Right. And in addition to the credit card statement, I found out that billing.microsoft.com has a record of all of my points purchased.
That's correct.
I didn't have any funny transactions on my credit card. They had spent the points that I had already put on mine.
Right. In which case we can just refund those points.
And you guys did, and that was great.
And the interesting thing is that they have to recover those points on an account to get content to give to an Xbox. So that's not hard to figure out who that person now, what their account is and what the Xbox is. So we can then take steps to, number one, revoke the points, and then ban the account and ban the console as well. So I mean, it's sort of a lot of loss for very little gain. They may have the account for a certain amount of time, but we're going to get it, and then they're going to experience, further, repercussions of their actions. So we just try to discourage it. We know that the people are out there, they're good at what they do, they try to do these things every day. We're not saying that we're not taunting them or anything of that nature, but it's just fraught with risk, and we can make sure that those boxes don't come back.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, Stephen,
problem.
and the experience has really been good for me. I was really mad Sunday night, but tech support was great. You guys were great in the follow through, and everything's back to the way it was.
Good.
So,
I'm glad we were able to help.
thanks again.
No problem at all. Thank you.